Right, so the Tories are still trying to blame everyone but themselves for our collapsing NHS. Quelle surprise, not. I don't know about you, but I'm just about sick and tired of the Tories making every excuse under the sun to blame someone else for their failings, especially when it comes to the NHS. It's our NHS. It is the classic example of this right now, though. 13 years they've been in power. 13 very long years. They might have eased off blaming the last Labour government for everything going wrong at long last. But when you're the one in the driving seat, it's all on you. Blaming others, feigning things being beyond your control is just weak, dishonest, is poor leadership. And as such, we come on to Rishi Sunak and his sad sack of a health secretary, Steve Barclay. Sunak will not accept his party, his government, is to blame for the state the NHS is in. The go-to is always the pandemic, even now, to this day. Oh, it cost us a fortune, so we can't invest in the NHS, or it was beyond our control. These are the gists of the excuses they regularly come out with. Perhaps Sunak might try and, I don't know, recoup some of those multi-billion-pound losses he chose to write off as Chancellor then. Or was that not his fault either? If he did, he might be able to invest in our NHS properly, give us a return on the insane spending he oversaw out of the public purse, which drove inflation and the cost of living crisis, as well as give those nurses and doctors a well-deserved pay rise and recruit staff lost due to the conditions they were working in. It's just an idea. Sure, he's now going after Michelle Mone, but only because that one got exposed, right? What about all of the rest? There's a lot more money out there. Perhaps he might have thought about that before partying with Bozo and getting fined for it, sending the wrong message to people who then broke the rules too, pointed to the people who made those rules breaking them as the reasons they did it. Perhaps the Tories shouldn't have encouraged the spread of the virus by sending people who had tested positive for it back into care homes, for example, or opening up schools too early whilst closing them down too late. Drivers of the pandemic as they were. Who can forget Gavin Williamson opening schools up for just one day after the Christmas holidays, despite being warned what would happen and causing a spike in cases? Or you again, Rishi Sunak yourself, and your daft Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which was responsible for another spike, wasn't it? Or Bozo relaxing rules over Christmas because when he wants to party, he has to party. All of this and more contributed to spikes in cases, led to us having one of the worst global responses to the pandemic, and not least because they'd lost the government plans to deal with pandemics to begin with. Genuinely, there were plans already in place from previous administrations, and this lot lost them. Incompetent, inept, frankly, if their brains exploded, it wouldn't ruffle their hair. Excess deaths are up 20% in the UK. Preventable deaths, by definition. But that's the fault of the pandemic too, according to the Tories. Well, they'd also said the pandemic was over. So which is it, guys? It has, of course, never gone away. The NHS delivered vaccination programme was a massive game changer. Of course it was. God bless it. And thank God the Tories let the NHS itself actually roll that out. It could have been far worse, though I suppose it really would have been far worse if anti-vaxxer Tory backbenchers, for example, like the now suspended oxygen thief Andrew Bridgen, were in charge. It's terrifying, actually, isn't it? As bad as the Tories have handled the NHS over the last 13 years, there are even more batshit Tory backbenchers who'd have been even worse. The fact is, the pandemic was a global problem. Every country had to tackle it, yet very few have 20% excess deaths to deal with, as this country does. So nice try, but no dice. Maybe it's all Putin's fault. Oh, some of them have gone there. The go-to boogeyman source of blame for everything. But again, no other country has faced such health problems on the scale we have, and Putin is a global ball ache. So again, it doesn't wash. Just admit it, Tories. Say the words. It was our fault. Get it off your chest. You'll feel better for it. No? Okay, so how about we tackle Brexit then? No, I'm not going to bash it, however you voted, but the fallout from it was again a mess entirely of the Tories' own making. They called the referendum. They lost the referendum, and they've screwed it up ever since. £350 million for the NHS on the side of a bus. Do you remember that, old chestnut? Where did that all go then? Who's to blame if not the Tories for that great badger of a lie then? We also lost staff as they lost many of the rights and civil liberties they had as EU nationals, many of whom worked in the NHS, and they left. No thought of retaining badly needed NHS staff there whatsoever, when the service has for decades relied on overseas staffing. Another fine mess of the Tories' own making. Any sign of an honest streak yet, Tories? No. Don't be silly, Damo. Now they're blaming militant health unions and nurses striking for making the service unsafe. But hold the bus here. The main reason they've gone on strike is because the service is now no longer safe. The nursing union, the Royal College of Nursing, the RCN, the largest nursing union on the planet that has existed since 1916, has gone on strike, yes, but for the first time in its entire bloody history. And that is on your watch. That in and of itself should tell you things have never been this bad before. And it's happened after your party has been in power for 13 years. Now, instead of admitting fault, admitting this situation needs rectifying with proper investment and emergency recruitment, you want to ban these nurses from going on strike as if that's going to make a difference. Having done so due to the dire extremes the situation has arrived at. Your justification for that? We need a safe level of service. Well, please refer back to the aforementioned reason the nurses are striking, because pay isn't their main concern. Patient safety is. Now, I'm not one to pick sides in Prime Minister's questions these days either. As far as I'm concerned, Sunak and Keir Starmer deserve each other. But we've done nothing to have either of them inflicted on us. But nonetheless, yesterday at PMQs, Sunak bleated at Starmer that if it were up to him, when he was challenged on the NHS, we'd still be in lockdown. Perhaps Sunak's memory is a short one on top of his other failings, since Starmer wanted us out of lockdown even more quickly than we already did open up, demonstrating his cluelessness as we saw cases spike each time the Tories did, just that always too soon as it was. But the fact Sunak again hides behind the pandemic shows he's ignoring everything else still, always looking for the next scapegoat, not least the several different sets of NHS reforms the Tories have overseen too in the past 13 years. Each and every time introducing more privatisation into the service, costing us more and delivering less, and each and every time making it harder to deliver world-class healthcare. We've gone from the best of healthcare on the planet to the Good Morning Britain doctor describing the NHS as third world healthcare now. It's way past time the Tories were forced to take responsibility for their failings on our health service, the state the service is in now. Should it collapse completely, as it is verging on, with people dying at home without help reaching them, with paramedics changing shifts just to hold the hands of patients lying in the backs of ambulances for hours and hours on end, with patients being moved out of cubicles to make way for others so they don't end up dying in a corridor, with doctors and nurses leaving because they've been burnt out, going on strike for the first time ever because they can't deliver safe levels of care. It is all on the Tories, every last bit of it. Never let them forget it. Never be taken in to believe it's been caused by anything or anyone else. If universal free healthcare at point of service ceases to exist, the Tory party must be held accountable for that alone, and in an ideal world cease to exist themselves as a political force. Our NHS has never been safe in their hands. It's been said time after time. And if the private sector swoops in to fill the void should we lose it, do you really think the price of care won't skyrocket, as instead of via your taxes, particularly national insurance, which is after all supposed to fund the NHS and which you'll have paid into all your life, you'll end up forking out via health insurance instead? Do you think I'm joking? Tory backbencher, one of the mad ones, Edward Lee, suggested just that this week. If you can't afford private healthcare, you can't afford the Tories. Take your vote elsewhere in future, for everyone's sake.